The rain hammered against the metal roof of Warehouse 17, creating a rhythm that David Carter had grown used to over his 3 years working this route. He pulled his jacket tighter and checked his flashlight, making sure the beam was strong enough to cut through the darkness ahead. Tuesday nights were always the same. Walk the perimeter, check the locks, make sure nobody had broken in to steal copper wiring or set up another homeless camp. David pushed open the side door and stepped into the cavernous space. His footsteps echoed off concrete floors that had not seen regular use in over a decade. The beam of his flashlight swept across empty shelving units and forgotten pallets. Everything seemed normal until he heard it dot a whimper. Soft and small, coming from the back corner. His first thought was a stray dog. The second thought was that he should probably call animal control. But something made him move forward instead, his work boots crunching on debris as he crossed the warehouse floor. The whimpering stopped. David slowed his approach and spoke quietly. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." 3 pairs of eyes reflected his flashlight beam. Not a dog. Children. 3 of them, huddled together behind a stack of wooden crates. They looked young, maybe 6 to 8 years old. Their clothes were dirty and torn. Their faces were smudged with grime. But what struck David most were their eyes. Even accounting for the flashlight reflection, they seemed to glow with an inner light. "Holy hell," David whispered. He lowered his flashlight so it would not blind them. "What are you kids doing here?" The tallest of the 3, a girl with tangled dark hair, stepped forward slightly. She held something clutched against her chest. A small figurine that looked like a dragon, carved for what appeared to be cheap plastic. It had a faint shimmer to it that David attributed to some kind of glitter coating. "Please do not report us," the girl said. Her English was perfect, but carried a strange formality. "We mean no harm to this structure." David blinked. "Report you? Kid, I'm more worried about you. How long have you been here? Where are your parents?" The 3 children exchanged glances. The girl seemed to be the spokesperson. "Our guardians are distant. We have been here for 5 of your day cycles." 5 days. These kids have been hiding here for 5 days. David felt his chest tighten. He had grown up in foster care himself, bouncing between homes until he aged out of the system. He knew what it felt like to be alone and scared. "Okay, listen." David crouched down to their level. "My name is David. I work here, checking the buildings. I'm not going to call the cops or anything. Not yet. But you 3 look like you haven't eaten in a while. When was the last time you had food?" The smallest child, a boy with wide eyes that seemed too large for his face, spoke up. 2 days cycles ago. We found bread in the metal container outside. Dumpster diving." David's jaw clenched. "All right. Stay here. I'm on my truck to get some things. I'll be right back. Do not run, okay? I want to help." He stood and turned, half expecting them to bolt the moment he left. But when he glanced back, they were still there, watching him with those strange, luminous eyes. The girl was whispering to the other 2, and David could have sworn their dragon figurines were glowing brighter point 20 minutes later. David returned with everything he could scrounge from his truck and the vending machines in the office building next door. Sandwiches, chips, bottled water, a couple of candy bars. He also grabbed the emergency blanket from his first aid kit. The children were exactly where he had left them. They watched him approach with a mixture of hope and wariness. David set the food down and stepped back, giving them space. "Go ahead. Eat." They fell on the food with desperate hunger that made David's heart ache. The boy tore into a turkey sandwich like he had never tasted anything better. The girl shared her chips with the 3rd child, a quiet kid with copper-colored hair who had not spoken yet. David noticed they ate quickly but with surprising manners, like they had been taught proper etiquette, but were too hungry to maintain it fully. "So," David said, sitting cross-legged on the floor, "you want to tell me what's really going on? 3 kids don't just end up living in an abandoned warehouse. Are you running from something?" The girl wiped her mouth and nodded slowly. "We are hiding. There are those who would harm us if they found us. This place seems safe. Empty. We did not expect anyone to come. I do rounds every Tuesday and Friday," David said. "You've been lucky. So who's after you? Family? Social services?" The 3rd child finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hunters. They seek us because of what we are." David frowned. "What you are?" "Your kids. The girl clutched her dragon figurine tighter. In the dim light, David could have sworn he saw it move, shifting its tiny head. He blinked, and it was still again. Just a trick of the shadows. "We are more than we appear," the girl said carefully. "But we are grateful for your kindness, David. You are the first person who has shown us care on this world." On this world. Strange phrasing. David chalked it up to the stress they were under. Maybe they were from another country, refugees perhaps. That would explain the formal speech patterns. "Look, I'm not going to leave you here to starve. Let me think about this overnight. I'll come back tomorrow with more food and some proper blankets. We'll figure something out." The girl's eyes shimmered, and for a moment David thought she might cry. Instead, she bowed her head formally. "You are kind. We will remember this." As David left the warehouse that night, he glanced back one last time. The three children had curled up together under the emergency blanket, their dragon toys arranged in a protective circle around them. The figurines seemed to pulse with a soft, warm light. David shook his head and headed to his truck. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. All he knew was that those kids needed help, and he was not about to turn his back on them. He had been the scared kid once. Now, he could be the person who gave a damn. David returned the next evening with 2 duffel bags full of supplies. He had cleaned out half his pantry and stopped at a discount store for blankets, bottled water, and basic toiletries. His paycheck was going to hurt this month, but he could not stop thinking about those 3 kids huddled in the darkness. When he entered Warehouse 17, the children were waiting near the door. They had cleaned themselves up somehow, their faces less grimy than before. The girl stepped forward and actually smiled. "Guardian David returns," she said. "Just David is fine," he replied, setting down the bags. "I brought more food. Real stuff this time, not just vending machine garbage. And blankets. It gets cold in here at night." Over the following week, David fell into a routine. He would finish his official rounds, then spend an extra hour with the kids. He learned their names. The girl was Lyra, the small boy was Finn, and the quiet one with copper hair was Owen. They were polite, curious, and strange in ways David could not quite pin down. Lyra asked questions about everything. Why do humans use paper money? Why did cars need roads when flight would be more efficient? Why do people eat cooked meat when raw was more nutritious? David answered as best he could, though her questions often seemed oddly advanced for a child. Finn was fascinated by David's phone. The boy would stare at the screen with wonder, watching videos like he had never seen technology before. Yet when David showed him how to swipe and tap, Finn picked it up instantly, his small fingers moving with unusual precision. Owen remained quiet but observant. He spent most of his time arranging and rearranging the 3 dragon figurines, which David now noticed seemed different each time he visited. One day the red one would have its wings spread. The next day they would be folded. David assumed Owen was playing with them, moving the pieces manually, but he never actually saw the boy touch them. On the 5th night, David brought pizza. The kids' reaction was pure joy. They had never tasted it before, and Finn declared it the greatest human invention he had ever encountered. David laughed, and, for a moment, it felt almost normal. Just a guy hanging out with some kids. Then Lyra burned herself. She had been reaching for a second slice when her hand brushed against the inside of the hot pizza box. She yelped and pulled back. David saw the red mark forming on her palm and immediately reached for the first aid kit he had started keeping in his truck. "Let me see," he said, taking her hand gently. The burn was there, angry and red. David opened a bottle of water to cool it down. But when he looked again 3 seconds later, the burn was fading. He watched, stunned, as the redness disappeared completely, leaving unblemished skin behind. "How did you?" David started. Lyra pulled her hand back, eyes wide with fear. "I heal quickly. It is normal for my kind." "Your kind," David repeated slowly. "Lyra, what exactly do you mean by that?" The 3 children exchanged those looks again, the silent communication that happened too fast for words. Finn clutched his dragon figurine. Owen moved closer to Lyra. The temperature in the warehouse seemed to rise. "We should not tell him," Owen whispered. "It is too dangerous." "He has been kind," Lyra argued. "He brings us food, protection. He is acting as a guardian should." "Guardians are chosen by the council," Finn said. "He is just a human. Just a human." David felt a chill run down his spine despite the rising heat. Okay, we need to talk. Right now. What's going on? Lyra made a decision. David could see it in the way her shoulders straightened. She was maybe 7 years old, but she carried herself like someone much older. Someone used to authority. You have shown us kindness on this world, she said. You deserve truth. But you must promise not to fear us. I promise to listen, David said carefully. Lyra held up her dragon figurine. In the dim warehouse light, it began to glow. Not the faint shimmer David had noticed before. This was bright, pulsing with inner fire. The figurine's tiny chest moved as if breathing. These are not toys, Lyra said. They are our bonded companions. Dragons in their juvenile form. They grow as we grow, sleeping until we need them. David's mouth went dry. Dragons. You're telling me dragons are real? On 17 worlds across the sovereign reaches, yes, Owen said quietly. Our people have existed for thousands of years. Finn held up his own figurine, which glowed with a blue-white light. We are not human, David. We are draken. Our bodies can shift between forms, though we are too young to fully transform. We heal fast. We can see in darkness. We feel temperature differently than you. David sat down hard on a wooden crate. His mind was racing. This was impossible, completely impossible, but he had seen Lyra's burn heal in seconds. He had watched those figurines move on their own. He had noticed their eyes glowing in the dark. So you're aliens, he said slowly. Actual aliens. On Earth. We were sent here to hide, Lyra explained. There was an attack on our home world. Assassins from the Ashkin, a rival faction. They killed many of the council. Our parents sent us away before they could reach us. Earth was chosen because it is remote and dangerous. A world so harsh that most species avoid it. Dangerous? David almost laughed. Earth? Owen nodded seriously. Your gravity is crushing. Your atmosphere is corrosive. Your weather is violent and unpredictable. Your world is full of venoms, diseases, and predators. You are a death world, David. Most species would die here within days. David processed this. Earth, the planet he had lived on his entire life, was considered too deadly for aliens. It was almost funny. So you're royalty hiding on a death world, and I've been bringing you pizza and blankets. You have been protecting us, Lyra corrected. Even without knowing what we are, you chose to help. That is why we call you Guardian, David. It is a title of great honor among our people. Finn's dragon figurine chirped, an actual sound that came from the glowing toy. David stared at it. This is insane, he muttered. Will you still help us? Owen asked quietly. Now that you know the truth. David looked at the 3 children. Aliens, dragons, royalty. It should have terrified him. It should have sent him running. But all he saw were 3 scared kids who needed someone to watch over them. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'll still help. But we need to be more careful now. If there are people hunting you, we need a better plan than hiding in a warehouse. Lyra smiled, and her eyes glowed brighter. Thank you, Guardian David. The title did not sound so strange anymore. The thunderstorm hit on a Friday night, 2 weeks after David learned the truth. He had been driving home when the first lightning strike lit up the sky, followed by thunder that shook his truck. His phone buzzed with a severe weather warning. Tornado watch until midnight. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The kids. They were alone in that warehouse with nothing but blankets and the supplies he had brought them. He had been planning to move them somewhere safer, maybe his apartment, but he had been afraid of drawing attention. Now that caution seemed stupid, he turned the truck around and headed back to the warehouse district. Rain pounded the windshield so hard his wipers could barely keep up. Lightning flashed continuously, turning night into flickering day. The roads were already flooding in the low-lying areas. When David reached Warehouse 17, he found a side door flapping in the wind. His heart jumped into his throat. He grabbed his flashlight and ran inside, rain soaking through his jacket in seconds. Lyra, Finn, Owen. The warehouse was dark except for the lightning that strobed through the high windows. David's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, sweeping across the empty space. Then he saw them. The 3 children stood in the center of the warehouse floor, arranged in a triangle. Their dragon companions floated in the air between them, No longer small figurines, but growing, expanding, their forms becoming more solid. The air around them crackled with energy that made David's hair stand on end. "What's happening?" David shouted over the storm. Lyra turned to face him. Her eyes were fully glowing now, bright gold that cut through the darkness. Scales had begun to appear on her neck and arms, shimmering red patterns that looked like armor. "They are coming," she said, her voice carrying an echo that had not been there before. "Our pursuers. They found us." Another lightning strike hit directly above the warehouse. The metal roof screamed. Finn cried out, and suddenly his small body began to shimmer and distort. David watched in horror and amazement as scales rippled across the boy's skin. His hands elongated, fingers becoming claws. The transformation lasted only a second before Finn gasped and forced himself back to human form. But it was enough. David understood now. These are not just alien children. They were dragons wearing human shapes, and that shape was slipping. "Finn cannot control it yet," Owen said, moving to his side. "The fear is too strong. Our dragons sense danger." The three floating companions had grown to the size of house cats now, their wings spreading wide. They circled the children in a protective pattern, flames flickering in their throats. "How long do we have?" David asked, his mind already racing through options. "Minutes," Lyra said. "Perhaps less." Their ship entered your atmosphere during the storm to hide their approach. "They will come for us now, while we are frightened and unable to defend ourselves properly." David pulled out his phone. No signal. The storm had knocked out the towers. He swore and looked around the warehouse, his years of working security kicking in. He knew this building. He knew this entire district. If hunters were coming, he would make them work for it. "Listen to me," David said, moving to the children. "We are not going to let them take you. Do you trust me?" All three nodded. Finn was still shaking, scales appearing and disappearing on his arms as he struggled with his fear. "Good. Owen, can those dragons of yours make light? Real light, not just glow." Owen's copper-colored dragon chirped and suddenly flared bright white, illuminating the entire warehouse like a spotlight. "Perfect. Lyra, you said you feel heat differently than humans, right? Can you handle high temperatures?" "We are firekin," Lyra said. "Heat does not harm us easily." David's mind was building a plan. "Then here's what we're going to do." He spent the next 3 minutes explaining, using every dirty trick he had learned growing up on rough streets, and every bit of knowledge he had about the warehouse district. The children listened with wide eyes. When he finished, Lyra actually grinned. "You think like a warrior, Guardian David." "I think like someone who's had to survive," David corrected. "Now move. We do not have much time." They scattered. David ran to the maintenance closet and grabbed everything useful. Fire extinguishers, industrial cleaning chemicals, a toolbox. The children moved to their positions, their dragons following. Owen and his dragon went high, climbing to the catwalk that ran along the upper level. Finn hid near the electrical panel. Lyra stayed in the center, visible and seemingly alone. The bait. David had just finished pouring a line of industrial degreaser near the main entrance when the doors exploded inward. 3 figures stepped through, and David's breath caught. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but he could see claws instead of hands. Scales covered what little skin was visible, dragons. Adult dragons in their humanoid forms. These were the hunters. "Little princes and princess," one of them hissed. "Your parents cannot protect you now. The Ash kin will rule, and you are loose and to be eliminated." Lyra stood her ground in the center of the warehouse, looking small and helpless. "You will not touch us." The lead hunter laughed. A child's defiance. "Adorable. Kill her quickly. Find the other 2. They moved forward, and David struck a match. The degreaser ignited with a whoosh that made the hunters jump back. Fire raced along the line David had poured, creating a wall of flame between them and Lyra. The hunters hissed in anger, but did not seem particularly concerned. They were firekin too, after all. They began to walk through it, which was when David triggered the fire suppression system. Water exploded from the ceiling sprinklers, flooding the warehouse. The hunters stumbled, confused. Their armor began to steam. David had done his research during the past 2 weeks, reading everything he could about dragons and mythology. Most dragon stories agreed on one thing. They hated being wet. It weighed them down, made them sluggish. These hunters were no exception. Now, David shouted Owen's dragon dove from the catwalk, blazing with white light that blinded the hunters. Finn hit the electrical panel, killing the main lights and plunging everything into chaos. Only Owen's dragon provided illumination, and it moved fast, disorienting the hunters with strobing light. Lyra ran, not away from the hunters, but toward David. Her dragon companion, now the size of a large dog, landed between her and the nearest hunter, breathing a jet of flame that made the armored figure stagger back. David had one more trick. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and aimed at the lead hunter, blasting foam directly into the eye slits of his helmet. The hunter roared and swung blindly. Warehouse District, Section 12, multiple intruders, possible armed hostiles. David shouted into his radio, which suddenly crackled to life as the storm cell passed, requesting immediate police response. The hunters froze. Police, authorities, witnesses, everything they wanted to avoid on this primitive death world. Retreat, the lead hunter snarled. We will return. They moved with inhuman speed, disappearing into the storm. David stood there, soaked and shaking, as the 3 children gathered around him. Their dragons had returned to smaller forms, but remained alert, watching the darkness. You made them run, Finn whispered in awe. You were just a human, and you made Ashkin hunters retreat. David laughed shakily. I made them think twice. There's a difference, but we cannot stay here. They will come back with more. We need to contact your people. You're real guardians. Can you do that? Lyra held up a small device David had never seen before. It looked like a crystal that pulsed with inner light. I can send a message, but they are far away. It may take days for them to arrive. Then we hold out for days, David said. Come on, I know a better place to hide. As they gathered their few belongings and prepared to leave, Owen looked up at David with those strange, luminous eyes. Why do you protect us? You gain nothing from this. You risk your life for children who are not even your species. David thought about his own childhood. All the times no one had been there. All the times he had needed someone to care. Because somebody should, he said simply, and I'm here, so it might as well be me. David took the children to the one place he thought the hunters would not look. His apartment. It was small, just a 1-bedroom place above a laundromat, but it had locks, walls, and most importantly, it was not an obvious hiding spot. The Ashkin were looking for scared children hiding in abandoned places. They would not expect their targets to be living openly in a residential building. At least, that was what David hoped. The kids settled in quickly. Lyra claimed the couch. Finn curled up in the armchair with a blanket. Owen stood by the window, his dragon companion perched on his shoulder like a glowing bird, watching the street below. We should not stay long, Owen said quietly. Every moment we remain puts you in danger, Guardian David. I'm already in danger, David replied, making hot chocolate in his tiny kitchen. Those hunters saw me. They know a human is protecting you. Might as well be comfortable while we figure this out. He brought them the mugs, and the children accepted gratefully. Finn took a sip and his eyes went wide. This is chocolate? We have read about this in human cultural files. It is made from beans. Yep, beans, sugar, and milk. Welcome to Earth. Lyra smiled, but it faded quickly. She pulled out the crystal communication device again and stared at it. The light inside pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. I sent the distress signal hours ago. Someone should have responded by now. Maybe the storm interfered, David offered. Or maybe space communication takes longer than we think. No, Owen said. Dragon communication crystals are instantaneous across any distance. If no one has answered, it means either they cannot reach us, or they think we are already dead. The apartment fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. David sat down on the floor, his back against the wall. He was exhausted. The adrenaline from the fight at the warehouse had worn off, leaving him shaky and aware of how insane his life had become in just a few weeks. Point 3 Alien dragon children. Assassins from another world. A distress signal that might never be answered. Tell me about your home, David said suddenly. Not the political stuff or the war. Just what was it like before all this? Lyra looked at him surprised. Then she smiled softly. It was beautiful. Our palace was built into a mountain range that touched the clouds. We could fly from our balconies and ride the thermal currents. The sky was purple at sunset, and 3 moons rose every night. I had a garden, Finn added, with fire lilies that bloomed only in intense heat. I would practice my flame control by making them open and close. Mother said I was getting very good. Owen stared at his reflection in the window. I missed the council meetings. Father would let me sit in the observation gallery and watch. I learned about trade agreements, border disputes, cultural exchanges. I was going to be a diplomat someday. David heard the past tense in their words. Was going to be. Had a garden. These kids had lost everything. Their home, their parents, their futures. And they were trying to be brave about it. You'll get back there, David said firmly. We just have to survive long enough for help to arrive. A soft chime came from the crystal. All 4 of them jumped. Lyra grabbed it, her hands shaking. Someone is responding. The crystal projected a holographic image above its surface. A dragon in humanoid form appeared, scales gleaming silver, eyes sharp and intelligent. She wore robes that marked her as someone important. This is Council Regent Sarah. I am receiving your distress signal, young ones. Confirm your identities. Lyra straightened. I am Lyra, daughter of Council Member Draxus. With me are Finn, son of Council Member Talisa, and Owen, son of Council Member Rowan. We escaped the attack 3 weeks ago and have been hiding on the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Earth sera breted, a death world. You have survived there. We have had help, Lyra said. She turned the crystal so David was visible in the projection. This is Guardian David. He is human. He has protected us from Ashkin hunters. Sarah's eyes widened. She stared at David like he was something impossible. A human? You bonded with a human as guardian. He chose to help us, Owen said, stepping into view. He brings us food, shelter, and defended us against armed hunters using nothing but his knowledge of this world. He is worthy of the title. David raised a hand awkwardly. I'm just trying to keep them alive until you can get here. Sarah continued to stare. Human, do you understand what you have done? Guardianship bonds are sacred among our people. You have taken responsibility for royal heirs. That is a life oath. I didn't know about any oath, David said. I just saw 3 kids who needed help. Something changed in Sarah's expression. Respect, maybe? Then you are braver and kinder than most species we have encountered. We are preparing a rescue ship, but it will take 4 of your days to reach Earth. Can you protect them that long? I'll do my best, David promised. The Ashkin will not give up easily, Sarah warned. They want the royal line eliminated. They will send more hunters. Let them come, David said. They don't know this world like I do. Earth might be a death world to you, but to me it's home. And I know how to use that. Sera no dead slowly. 4 days, Guardian David. Keep them safe for 4 days. The Dragon Council will remember your service. The hologram faded. Lyra lowered the crystal, and David saw tears in her eyes. They are coming. We are going home. Not yet, David said gently. 4 days is a long time. We need to prepare. He stood and moved to his closet, pulling out a duffel bag. Inside were things from his past life. A knife he had carried for protection when he lived on the streets. Road flares. A baseball bat. Not much, but it would have to do. Owen, you said Earth is dangerous, right? Venoms, diseases, predators. Yes. Your world is classified as extreme hazard. Most galactic species require environmental suits to survive here. David smiled grimly. Then it's time I teach you 3 how to use that. If the Ashkin want to hunt you on my planet, they're going to learn why humans are the apex predator here. Over the next hours, David explained Earth's dangers. He told them about bacteria and viruses that could kill aliens with no immunity, about poisonous plants that grew in every park, about the chemical cleaners under his sink that would burn through unprotected skin. about the traffic patterns and surveillance cameras that covered the city. The children listened with growing understanding. They were thinking like dragons now, like warriors. But David was teaching them to think like humans, like survivors. The Ashkin are stronger than me, David said. Faster, tougher, better armed. But they're not from here. Every advantage they have in space, I take away on Earth. This is my territory, and nobody hunts kids in my territory. Lyra's dragon companion, now the size of a medium dog, chirped and nuzzled against David's hand. The gesture surprised him. The creature's scales were warm, almost hot to the touch. It looked up at him with intelligent eyes and made a sound that was almost like a purr. She approves of you, Lyra said softly. Dragons bond slowly, but when they do, it is absolute. She sees you as pack now, as family. David stroked the dragon's head carefully. Family. He had not had that in a long time. Yeah, well, the feeling's mutual. Finn yawned, exhausted from the stress and fear. Owen was already dozing in the chair. Lyra fought to keep her eyes open. Get some sleep, David said. I'll keep watch. We start preparing for real tomorrow. As the children settled in, their dragons curling protectively around them, David sat by the window with his baseball bat across his knees. Somewhere out there, more hunters were coming. But they would find that protecting 3 dragon children had awakened something in David Carter that he thought had died years ago. Purpose. And he would be damned if he let anyone take that away. The Ashkin returned on the second day. David had expected them sooner. He had spent the previous day preparing. Not with weapons, because he had none that would stop a 7-foot armor dragon warrior. Instead, he used what made humans dangerous. Knowledge. Planning. The willingness to fight dirty. David had mapped every exit, every hiding spot, every potential weapon within 6 blocks of his apartment. He had tested the children's abilities, learning what they could and could not do. Lyra could raise temperatures in a small area, useful for setting off sprinkler systems or making metal too hot to touch. Finn could see heat signatures through walls, giving them advance warning. Owen's dragon had the brightest light, perfect for blinding enemies with sensitive eyes. Their dragons had grown too. No longer figurine-sized, they were each about as large as medium dogs now, with wingspans that barely fit in David's small apartment. They could breathe fire in short bursts, fly for brief periods, and their scales had hardened enough to deflect knives. Not that David had tested that last part. He refused to hurt them. When Finn's eyes suddenly glowed and he pointed at the window, David knew their time was up. 3 heat sources approaching from the south, moving fast. They are on the rooftops. David nodded. He had prepared for rooftop approach. Everyone remember the plan? The children nodded. They looked scared but determined. David felt a fierce pride in them. 3 weeks ago, they had been helpless and hiding. Now, they were ready to fight. Lyra, you're with me. Finn, Owen, you know what to do. The apartment exploded into motion. Finn and Owen grabbed their emergency bags and headed for the back exit David had prepared, a hole he had cut in his closet that led to the crawl space between apartments. Their dragons followed, squeezing through the gap. Lyra stayed with David. Her dragon, who she had named Ember despite David's earlier request to avoid that name, perched on the kitchen counter, eyes fixed on the window. They will come through fast, Lyra said. Ashkin tactics favor overwhelming force. Let them, David replied. He held a spray bottle filled with a mixture he had spent hours perfecting. Vinegar, hot sauce, industrial cleaner, and a few other ingredients that would be harmless to humans, but absolutely miserable for someone with a sensitive nose and eyes. The window shattered. 2 Ashkin warriors crashed through, moving with terrifying speed. They wore the same dark armor as before, but David noticed moisture-resistant seals this time. They had learned from the warehouse. The lead warrior spotted Lyra and lunged. David stepped between them and sprayed directly into the warrior's face. The Ashkin screamed and stumbled back, clawing at his helmet. The mixture had found gaps in the seals. Good. Ember attacked, small but fierce, breathing fire at the second warrior's legs. The warrior kicked at her, but the dragon was fast, darting away and coming back for another pass. Run! David shouted at Lyra. They bolted for the door, David's baseball bat in one hand and his spray bottle in the other. Behind them, The Ashkin warriors recovered and gave chase. David had counted on that. He needed them angry and focused on pursuit rather than searching methodically. He led them down the stairs, through the building's main floor, and out into the street. Pedestrians screamed and scattered. David felt bad about that, but he needed witnesses, needed attention. The Ashkin wanted to operate in secret. David was about to make that impossible. A delivery truck was idling at the curb. David grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind it just as one of the warriors rounded the corner. The hunter raised a weapon, something that crackled with energy. David grabbed the truck's fire extinguisher from its mount and threw it. Not at the warrior, but at the ground in front of him. The canister ruptured, exploding foam everywhere. The warrior fired blindly, and his energy bolt hit a parked car. The car alarm started screaming. Lights flashed. More people emerged from buildings to see what was happening. David saw someone recording on their phone. Perfect that he ran again, Lyra keeping pace easily despite her small size. Ember flew overhead, shrieking challenges at the pursuing Ashkin. They were heading for the location David had chosen. The old industrial park 3 blocks away. The one with the chemical storage facility. The warriors were gaining. They were faster than any human, their enhanced bodies built for hunting. But David knew these streets. He cut through an alley, jumped a fence, ducked under a low-hanging pipe that he knew was there. The Ashkin followed, but had to slow down, unfamiliar with the obstacles. David reached the chemical storage facility and hit the emergency release on the fence gate. It swung open. Warning signs covered every surface. Hazardous materials, corrosive chemicals, flammable liquids. Humans. This place was dangerous. To aliens with no immunity to Earth's chemistry, it was a nightmare. David pulled out his phone and dialed. "This is David Carter. I'm at the ChemStore facility on Industrial Road. There are armed intruders chasing me. They already shot at civilians. Send police now." He hung up before dispatch could ask questions. Then he turned to face the Ashkin warriors, who had just entered the facility. "Last chance to leave," David said. The lead warrior laughed. "A human threatening us? You are nothing. Weak. Fragile. You cannot even breathe our atmosphere without dying." "No," David agreed. "But you can't breathe mine without consequences either." He grabbed a valve on one of the storage tanks and turned it. Gas hissed out, a chemical used for industrial cleaning. Harmless to humans in small doses. But the Ashkin warriors immediately started coughing. Their eyes watered behind their helmets. "Your armor is sealed against water," David said. "But gas? Gas finds every crack, every gap, every seal that's not perfect. And I'm betting you put those suits on fast." Didn't have time to check everything. The warriors stumbled. One felt his knees. Their scales were turning colors, a rash spreading across exposed skin. David felt almost bad. Almost. "Earth's chemistry is different," he continued. "What's safe for us can poison you. What you breathe easy might kill us. This whole world is incompatible with your biology. And you came here thinking you were the hunters." Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. The warriors heard it too. They looked at each other, then at David and Lyra. The calculation was clear in their body language. This was not worth it. Not here. Not now. They retreated, moving fast despite their obvious discomfort. David watched them go, then quickly shut off the valve and grabbed Lyra. "We need to go before the cops get here. Questions I can't answer." They ran back through the industrial park, meeting Finn and Owen at the rendezvous point David had chosen. The boys were shaking, but unharmed. Their dragons chirped happily at seeing Ember again. "That was incredible," Finn breathed. "You made them retreat again, with just chemicals and cleverness." "Humans are good at chemistry," David said. "We've been poisoning each other for thousands of years. It's kind of our thing." Owen looked at him with those strange, glowing eyes. "Our warriors trained for decades to fight, as you just did. How did you learn this?" David thought about his childhood. The streets, the fights, learning to survive when bigger, stronger people wanted to hurt him. "I grew up here, on Earth, in the kind of places where you learn to fight smart or you don't survive. Your warriors are strong, but they've never had to be weak. They don't know how to win when they're outmatched. But we are royalty," Lyra said quietly. We were never weak, either. No, David agreed. But you're learning, and that's going to make you better rulers someday. You'll understand what it's like to need help, to be vulnerable, to rely on others. They made it back to the apartment building through back routes. David's phone was buzzing with news alerts. Reports of armed intruders, explosions, a chase through downtown. The Ashkin had made a scene despite themselves. Good. Let the whole world know something was happening. Let there be attention and questions. The hunters worked best in shadows. David was dragging them into the light. Back in the apartment, David collapsed on the couch. Lyra sat next to him, her small hand taking his. 2 more days until the council arrives, she said. Can we survive 2 more days? David looked at the 3 children and their dragons, at this strange family he had accidentally acquired. He thought about the Ashkin warriors retreating twice now, about human ingenuity versus alien strength. Yeah, he said, we can survive. And when your people get here, they're going to find 3 royal heirs who learn to fight like humans. I almost feel bad for whoever tries to threaten you in the future. Fiend grinned. We will tell them we were trained by Guardian David of Earth, the human who made Ashkin warriors flee. Let's survive first, David said. Then we can worry about stories. But as he sat there with 3 alien children leaning against him and their dragons purring contentedly, David realized this was already a story worth telling. The Dragon Council ship arrived early on the 3rd day instead of the 4th. David was making breakfast when Finn called out from the window, his voice filled with wonder. Guardian David, there is something in the sky. Something beautiful. David looked up and through his apartment window saw what appeared to be a star growing brighter. Except stars did not descend. This one did, dropping through the clouds like a falling jewel. As it got closer, David could make out a shape. Sleek and organic, like a teardrop made of silver and light. It was massive, easily the size of a football stadium. That is a council diplomatic vessel, Lyra breathed. They sent the luminous path. That is one of our greatest ships. The ship descended over the city, and David could only imagine the panic it was causing. His phone started buzzing with emergency alerts. UFO sightings. Government warnings. His apartment window rattled as the ship's engines created pressure waves in the atmosphere, but the ship did not land in the city. Instead, it hovered over the industrial park where David had fought the Ashkin, and several smaller craft detached from it, descending to street level. David's door buzzed. He looked at the intercom screen and saw something impossible. Council Regent Sarah stood in his hallway, flanked by 2 large dragons in their humanoid forms. She looked exactly like her hologram, scales gleaming silver, eyes sharp with intelligence. May we enter, Guardian David? David hit the unlock button, feeling suddenly very aware that his apartment was tiny and cluttered and smelled like burnt toast. The door opened and Sarah stepped in, having to duck slightly to fit through the frame. The 2 guards remained outside. The 3 children immediately bowed, a formal gesture David had never seen them make before. Regent Sarah, we are honored. Sarah looked at them, and her stern expression cracked. She dropped to her knees and opened her arms. All 3 children ran to her, and she held them tightly, tears streaming down her scaled face. You are alive. You are safe. When we lost contact, when we heard about the attack, we thought. She could not finish. She just held them tighter. David stood awkwardly to the side, not sure what to do. This was a moment for them, for their people. He was just the human who had helped. But Sarah looked up at him, and her expression changed to something David could not quite read. Respect, maybe. Wonder. She stood, gently moving the children aside, and approached him. Then, to David's complete shock, she bowed. Deeply. The kind of bow that looked like it meant something important. Guardian David of Earth, the Dragon Council owes you a debt we can never fully repay. You protected our heirs, fought our enemies, and asked for nothing in return. You have shown courage and kindness that most species could not match. I just did what anyone should do, David said uncomfortably. No, Sarah said firmly. Most would not. We have contacted hundreds of species across the galaxy. Most are kind in times of peace. But when danger comes, when it costs something to be good, most species look away. You did not. You faced warriors who could have killed you easily. You sacrificed your safety, your resources, your normal life. For children who were not your own, not even your species. She reached into her robes and pulled out something that glowed with inner light. A crystal, like the communication device, but larger and more intricate. It pulsed with colors David had no names for. The Dragon Council wishes to offer you a position. Guardian of the Royal Heirs, officially recognized. It is a title that has been empty for 3 generations because we could find no one worthy. You would be responsible for their safety, their education in practical matters, and their connection to species beyond our own. David blinked. You want to keep watching them? We want you to be family, Lyra said quietly. She took his hand. In our culture, guardians are chosen, not born. They are the ones who prove through action that they care. You proved it, David. You are our guardian. Please do not leave us now. Finn and Owen joined her, taking David's other hand. Their dragons chirped and nuzzled against his legs. Ember spread her wings, now large enough that they brushed the ceiling and made a sound that was almost like a song. David looked at the 3 children. He thought about the past 3 weeks. The fear, the fighting, the strange joy of having someone depend on him, of matching to someone. What about my job? My apartment? I can't just leave Earth. You would split your time, Sarah explained. The children must learn about many worlds, including this one. Earth has been added to our cultural exchange program. You would be humanity's first official ambassador to the sovereign reaches. When the children are on other worlds, you would accompany them. When they are here, you would live as you do now, with one difference. She gestured, and one of the guards brought a case. Inside was armor, scaled and beautiful, designed to fit a human frame. Next to it was a weapon that looked like a spear made of crystallized light. And there were other things. Technology David did not recognize. Medical devices, communication equipment. You would have resources, Sarah said. Protection, training, everything you need to continue your role as guardian. The Dragon Council does not ask its people to fight alone. David picked up the armor. It was lighter than it looked, warm to the touch. He could see his reflection in the scales, and for the first time in years, he saw someone who looked like they mattered, like they had purpose. If I say yes, what happens to them? David asked, nodding at the children. They return home, Sarah said. They resume their education. They prepare to take their parents' places on the council. But they will need guidance. Someone to teach them what we cannot. How to think like humans think. How to survive when they're not the strongest. How to be kind when it costs something. You want me to teach dragon royalty how to be human. We want you to teach them what humanity taught you. Resilience, compassion, the strength to protect others even when you are afraid. David looked at Lyra, Finn, and Owen. 3 kids who had lost everything and somehow found trust again. 3 kids who had taught him that family was not about blood or species. It was about showing up, about caring when it mattered. Okay, David said. I'll do it. The children cheered. Their dragons sang, a sound like bells and thunder mixed together. Sarah smiled, and it transformed her stern face into something warm. Then by the authority of the Dragon Council, I name you Guardian David Carter, protector of the royal heirs, ambassador to Earth, and honored friend of the sovereign reaches. The crystal in her hand flared bright, and David felt something change. Not physically, but deeper, a connection forming. He could suddenly sense the children's emotions, feel their joy and relief. The guardian bond, settling into place. Over the following hours, preparations were made. David's apartment would be maintained by the council. His bills would be handled. His former employer would receive notice that he had accepted a government position, which was technically true. The warehouse where he had first found the children was marked by the council as a historical site. The place where humanity and the sovereign reaches first formed a bond. As the sun set, David stood on his apartment building's roof with the 3 children, watching the luminous path hover in the sky above. Soon they would board it. Soon they would leave Earth for worlds David had never imagined. But they would come back. And when they did, David would be here. Guardian, teacher, family. Are you scared? Finn asked quietly. David thought about it. Yeah, terrified. I'm just some guy from Earth. I have no idea how to be a guardian to dragon royalty. You already are, Owen said. You have been since the moment you brought us food instead of calling authorities. Since you fought for us when you had every reason to run. Lyra leaned against him. We were so scared when we came here. Earth was supposed to be a death world, a place of danger and pain. But we found you instead, and you showed us that even on the harshest world, there is kindness. That is a very human thing, Guardian David. David put his arms around them, these three strange children who had changed his life completely. Their dragons settled around them, wings spread protectively. Then I guess I better keep being human, he said. Someone has to show the galaxy what we're really about. Above them, the luminous path opened its docking bay, light spilling out like a welcoming hand. David picked up his bag, adjusted his new armor, and took the children's hands point 3 weeks ago. He had been a lonely maintenance worker with nothing but a dead-end job and an empty apartment. Now he was walking toward a spaceship with 3 dragon children who called him guardian and dragons who considered him pack. Earth might be a death world to the rest of the galaxy, but David had learned something important. Humans did not survive harsh worlds by being the strongest or the fastest. They survived by caring for each other, by protecting the vulnerable, by choosing kindness even when it was hard. And if that was what made humans special, then David was going to make sure the entire Sovereign Reaches learned it. He was Guardian David Carter now, and he had dragon princes and princesses to raise.